Hello, I believe we are live. Could someone give me a yes? Someone in the chat, give me a yes. Excellent, a million yeses. We are live. Fantastic. Thank you for having me. I have you for the next 30 minutes of your one wild, precious life. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. And Laura from Commerce Ballarat will curate those questions for some question time at the end. So feel free to throw your questions in there, and with the time we have left at the end, I'll be able to answer those. Firstly, I should acknowledge the traditional custodians of country on the land wherever you are in Australia. I am streaming to you live from my living room on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. If you're in Ballarat, you are working and living on the land of the Wathaurong. I acknowledge elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge their connection to country and waterways. So the context for today's event is a pretty cool one. This began as a live event to be held in Ballarat, but it's now, some of it has become an online event, which has meant that people all over Australia and even the world have been able to log in and live stream this speech. So welcome if you're from the Northern Hemisphere. It's an awfully late night for you, so thank you for joining us. And if you're not from Ballarat, this is hosted by Commerce Ballarat. If you're not from Ballarat, let me give you a little bit of background on Ballarat. It's a town in the Central Highlands of Victoria, about 100 kilometres or 60 miles from Melbourne, and it's famous for an event called the Eureka Stockade, which was in the 1800s sometime, and it was basically a tax rebellion. So Ballarat is full of rebels who don't like paying tax, my kind of people. 100,000 people live in Ballarat, and I have been briefed today to speak to you about doing business differently. The CEO of Commerce Ballarat was called away in an emergency, so I'm introducing myself. I might look like the halftime entertainment, but I actually have about 28 years now experience in business. I began my career, when I first left school, I began my career as a jillaroo. Now that was not a career move, that was really just a fun move. And I did that in country Victoria, of all places. I didn't do it for long, but boy, did it have an impact on me. And most importantly, my time working as a jillaroo, learning how to drive tractors, build fences, dig holes, ride horses, move cattle, knocked the princess out of me, which I think is a really, really important thing. And when I'm Prime Minister, every kid in Australia will have 1 or even 2 years, 1 year off between school and their next thing, work or university, to work in primary industry. It is such a good learning experience and so good for the country. Then I went on to run an advertising agency. I set up my own agency, but that didn't come about because I wanted to. I was working for an agency my first year out of high school, and I had a massive motorcycle accident in that first year on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And I spent the next year, a week and a day having 14 reconstructive operations to stick me back together. I spent a lot of that time in hospital, lots of surgeries, and it was a really difficult time, incredibly difficult, challenging time. Everything was out of my control. And during that time, I learnt the art of fantasy. I learnt how to manage my anxiety because everything was out of my control. All I could do was fantasize about best case scenarios as a creative venture rather than worry about the things that I couldn't control. And that has become a skill I've used throughout my life. But it looked like I was going to lose my leg. And in the end, I had some pretty radical surgery. They actually stitched my legs together. They took my left calf and they stitched it to my right shin. And so my left leg fed my right leg with blood supply, and I got to keep my legs. So they stitched my legs together, which is not very funny when you're a highly promiscuous teenager. I think my mother might have arranged it. But I got to keep my leg. And that time in hospital gave me lots of time to fantasize. And one of my fantasies was to start my own ad agency. I had worked for an agency for 8 months, so, you know, I had 8 months experience, and off I went and set up my own agency. I ran it for 20 years, had a team of 4, a tidy little turnover of about $1 million a year, and it suited me beautifully because I bore easily, and it meant I could jump from one client to the next, and I learned so much from these different sectors, these different markets. One of my biggest clients was the National Rugby League, and I jumped from working on NRL ads to working on Mills and Boon direct mail packages. So really, really different work, and that suited me beautifully. But I'm a bit of a, what I call squirrel chaser. I'm always looking, I've focused on, in my business, it's billable work. But then I was always looking for other interesting things to pursue, things to learn. And my first big squirrel was when it was what I call the childbirth squirrel. And I decided to train as a doula. So, which is a childbirth support person. Trained as a doula, loved doing that, but the very first birth I attended as a doula was with this gorgeous couple, but the dad had no idea what he was doing. He wanted to be supportive, but he just cocked things up from start to finish. And I thought, the men are being left out of this conversation. Someone needs to help men understand their role in childbirth. And so I created the world's first childbirth education program for men, and it's run in pubs all over Australia. You should bring it to Ballarat. That taught me so much. And I created that program in 2004 now, before Facebook, before Eventbrite. I had to build a ticketing system, and I had to market this thing through hospitals, midwives and obstetricians. It was a whole new area to learn. But I loved chasing that squirrel. It taught me that if you put a man in his natural habitat and put a beer in his hand, he'll listen to just about anything. And then I wrote a book called Cheers to Childbirth, which is a guide for men on childbirth. And I'll come back to tell you about some of the amazing learnings I had when I published that book for men. Then I went on to, I chased a squirrel into Ethiopia, of all places. I saw a woman on the Oprah show. Her work was incredible. I became a donor to her work, funding hospitals and a midwifery school in Ethiopia. And I started donating my doula fees to this work in Ethiopia. And you know, when charities send you their stuff, as soon as you start donating it, and their stuff was terrible. And I rang the charity, and I said, look, your visual communication is doing you damage. This is what I did so well, visual communication. And there was this long silence on the phone. So I had found the author of the Ugly newsletter. He said to me, Lucy, I have been praying for 10 years for someone like you to come and take this job away from me, because I hate it and I'm terrible at it. And that was great. I could take them on as a pro bono client. And for 8 years, I traveled to Ethiopia because I offered and I showed up. And I had some amazing adventures as a volunteer. I would go and shoot a big catalogue of images every year, and I loved those adventures. Then I took a big leap, and I became the CEO of that charitable entity funding hospitals in Ethiopia, and boy did I adore that job. And I raised $7 million in 2.5 years for that work, before I was suddenly fired by text message by a board of 3 volunteers. And boy, did that teach me a lot. I remember one of my speakers agents said to me at the time, Lucy, you ain't nobody until you've been fired. American chick. Found out later she was actually quoting someone else, but it was just what I needed to hear at the time. She was like, Lucy, you push the envelope. You break rules all the time. You do things differently, and that ruffles people's feathers. It bothers them, but it's really successful. So onwards I went, and then I became the CEO of an international aid charity working in Cambodia, funding schools and a network of health centres. And health centres, especially women's health, has always been of enormous interest to me, because when women are giving birth, women and babies, pregnancy, postnatal is a really dangerous time in their lives. And I've often been challenged by people who say education is more important for women and girls, but I have found it really difficult to educate people when they're dead. So for me, it's health, women's health is absolutely crucial, and that's my passion. So I love that, that challenge in Cambodia. These days, I'm a consultant and a speaker. I I have been speaking at live events for a long time, and now I speak at more events all over the world because I can literally stream from my lounge room. So that's a little bit of background on me and why I have been invited to speak to you today on doing business differently. Now, never has there been a time that this topic has been more relevant than now, than during the pandemonium, that we really do need to do business differently. What a time to be alive. Still things happen during the day where I think this is so strange, but this is the new normal. So, walking into the Apple store the other day, somebody took my temperature and handed me a face mask before I was allowed into the store. Live stream funerals and weddings. Never heard of such a thing. Visiting your gynecologist online. Only joking, I totally made that one up. That is so not going to happen. But we are going to have to do things differently as consumers, but very much so as business people. We're going to have to think creatively and do things differently. Now, I'm going to cover a few topics, a few themes, which I have learned from some amazing people I've worked with in my career. All of these people are incredibly successful, and they all showed these traits. And these traits are also all covered in juicy detail in my memoir, which is called Get the Girls Out. You can get that at the bookstore in Ballarat, and you can order it in from any bookstore in the nation. So the first theme is courage. Then I'm going to cover kindness. Not many people think of kindness as an aspect in their business strategy, but it is, and it should be. And then I'm going to cover creativity, optimism, and fun, and why these are crucial to your bottom line. So courage, first up. Courage is just, in my opinion, it is just the willingness to show up, even though things might not turn out so well, and not behaving like a peanut. So showing up, even though things aren't going to turn out so well, it's not really courage if you know you're going to win. It's not really courage if you know it's going to be a great day, it's going to be fine. It's courage when you know things are going to be tough. And for some people, every day, they are calling on their everyday courage, every day, at the moment especially. For some people, it's an incredibly courageous act just to open their shop today, or to pick up the phone from their distressed customers is an act of courage. But to show up, even though it's going to be tough, and to behave with grace, that is courage. So I'm not talking about jumping out of aeroplanes into war zones or facing a firing squad. I have never done anything courageous like that. I've been courageous in the corporate sense, in the creative sense. I've been a courageous person in the hairdressing sense. But it's those everyday acts of courage that keep the world turning around. Now, I've got a few tips on how to actually access your courage easily every day. Now, the number one tip for accessing your courage, and this is crucial, it's really important that you stop caring what other people think of your decisions. Stop caring what other people think. Brené Brown says this: you get 1 square inch of paper on which to write the names of people whose opinions matter to you. And I have big handwriting. There are only about 3 people on my piece of paper at the moment, and from time to time I do a little shuffle. So I encourage you to do that. Square inch piece of paper, do it right now. Write down the names of the people whose opinions actually matter to you and forget the rest. Also, do not take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. So people will give you feedback, and unsolicited is my favourite kind. But you need to grow thick skin. Courage takes some serious thick skin. And as Winston Churchill said, you will never get to your destination if you are constantly stopping to throw stones at every dog that barks. So stay focused. Don't worry about what other people think of you. The second I did that, I flew so much higher and so much faster when I wasn't worried. Sometimes I need reminders that I need to do that, but it's an exercise definitely worth doing and reminding yourself about. Secondly, stop fearing no. I've discovered that most people don't want to do things, don't want to dip into their own courage because they're simply afraid of the answer no. And no is just a basic rejection. But no is not a terminal condition. It won't matter. If someone says no, it's okay. You can come back at them at a different time with a different ask. Come back at them in person. I have noticed people are much less likely to say no if you ask in person than if you ask them by email. So come back and ask in person with a different ask. Ask a different person. My kids do it all the time. Ask me, then they ask their father the same question. See if they can get a different answer. So no is not a terminal condition. Also, it's something worth exercising. If you're afraid of no, come right at that, hit it head on and ask the questions you're pretty sure you'll get a no for, just to exercise that muscle and build up your armor, your thick skin for the answer no. No is not a terminal condition. Remember too that courage, the way humans behave and the way we are wired, our neuroscience and our behavior as almost like herd animals means that we look to our leaders for behavior cues. And this is all about survival. And we look to our leaders and the strong people around us. So courage is contagious and courage trickles down from leadership. So if you're in a position of leadership, your acts of courage, your willingness to show up and do the tough things every day will trickle down to the people who report to you, who work with you, who walk into your business every day. So show that courage to them. Kindness is something that isn't usually discussed in the context of business strategy, but I think it's crucial. Every business I have ever built has had a fundamental act of kindness beneath its success. And I want you to think about how you can implement kindness in your business plan. Imagine if every budget we wrote had to have a line, an actual budget line for kindness. And strategy documents. Edit your templates so that your strategy documents have a question around how is this strategy, event, business proposition going to deliver kindness. And there's a bunch of reasons why kindness is so crucial to your bottom line. Kindness makes you live longer, you as a person, and it makes your customers and everyone you deal with live longer, feel better about themselves. So a quick summary, I have Lucy's 4 tips for living longer, and it all comes out of kindness. Now stay with me. Number 1 is, believe it or not, there's a stack of research behind this. The Kindness Institute in the US has put millions and millions of dollars into this research, and the number 1 way to use kindness to extend your life expectancy is to say nice things to yourself in the mirror every morning. True story. So all the men who are streaming this event right now are like, yeah, good one. And that is why women live longer, because we look in the mirror in the morning and go, how good do I look? I tell you what, I do tell myself that I love my hair every morning. My hair gives me so much entertainment and I love it. Love my hair. So look at yourself in the mirror. If you need to get a whiteboard marker and write on the mirror, you look great today, do that. The research shows that it's good for your blood pressure. It gives you an endorphin lift. Talk to yourself, speak to yourself nicely. The next thing is self-care. The next thing on the list, all the research shows that if you look after yourself in the ways that bring you pleasure and the ways that bring you satisfaction and care, it's good for your health. You will live longer. My favorite thing to do when I'm really stressed is I pour a very deep hot bath. I sit in the bath and I eat a chiquito. That is my self-care. When everything has gone to crap and things are extremely difficult, that is a very small thing I do for myself. But do things that are really different to what you do at work all day. Make sure that your self-care isn't reconciling a bank account so you don't have to do it tomorrow. Make sure it is something that helps you check out completely from what you do at work and do something really pleasurable. It might be renovating some chairs. It might be gaming. It might be whatever it does that makes you log out of that work stress. Self-care is really important. I didn't believe this one when I read it, but the number 3 thing is counting your acts of kindness. So at the end of each day, the research shows that if you go through the acts of kindness that you have shown to others during your day, it will have profound effects on your health, on your endorphin levels, your serotonin levels, which have to work in balance with your melatonin levels and help you sleep, and your blood pressure, believe it or not. So at the end of each day, it's a great exercise to think through what things have you done that day, to be kind to the people around you. And it's also a great exercise to do that and recognize if you haven't done any. A really good exercise. And then you know what you're up to tomorrow. To consider your acts of kindness. Now, the cool thing about kindness is when you display kindness towards someone else, you get a shot of endorphins through your system and they make you feel really good. The giver of kindness, the receiver of kindness gets the same little shot of endorphins. And it could be anything. Opening a door for someone, giving them flowers, you know, these basics, these can be really small things, paying a bill for them, just checking in on them. But what is really interesting, and for the people who are listening to this live stream, if you're really lazy and you can't be bothered being kind, the research shows that even if you just witness other people being kind to someone else, you get the shot of endorphins in your system as well. So you can be lazy and kind at the same time. What I also find fascinating is that you can trick the body into thinking you're happy. And that when you smile, even if you're grumpy as hell, if you are smiling, your body is tricked into thinking all is well, and it slowly starts to release endorphins and make you feel better, which is why having a really vicious resting bitch face is not a good thing. You need to fix that. You need to smile when you're concentrating. And honestly, it releases endorphins, makes you feel better, knocks on into serotonin, knocks on into melatonin, makes you feel better, makes you sleep better. Miracle. The number 4 thing for implementing kindness in your business and for making sure, and for living longer, well, Lucy's living longer list, the number 4 thing is to celebrate success. Now, this can be inside your business or at home as well, outside your business, celebrating success. Just about anything is a success at the moment. We've had so many limitations on the way we do business, the way we live, the way we move. I love this particular story though. When I was running the Ethiopian charity, I had a CFO. His name was Alex. Awesome dude. I always hired fantastic CFOs. Money bags, I used to call him. And I was the CEO, I was the front woman, I pulled in the money, he was money bags, he made it all perfect. We were a brilliant team. He was the kind of guy, he was sort of my perfect antidote to me. We were such a good team. I'd say something like, yes, let's do this. And he'd go, oh, are we insured? So that kind of guy. And I remember one day he just quietly said to me, open plan office, one of those murderous open plan office situations. And he said, oh, Lucy, I just noticed that we've just cracked the $6 million mark in our fundraising. He just mentions this to me, just quietly. I went, Alex, we need to celebrate these successes for all the staff, all the volunteers. For me, I need to know. We were traveling so fast and receiving big donations, and this was towards the end of June, which is donation season, that he hadn't quite warned me with much notice. I said, Alex, next time, okay, 7 million is the next huge big mark, which we did get to. And I said, on the $7 million mark, I want you to make the biggest fuss, but in the lead up, every day we are celebrating as we move up towards that mark. And I want those numbers slapped on my desk every single morning. I want one of those big thermometer things on the wall in the office. I want you to fill in the little dots so we can see it going up and the volunteers get psyched and we're all feeling good. And it's a sense of kindness to ourselves for our incredible hard work. You know what I'm going to do, Alex? I said this word for word. I still remember. I'm going to put a net above your desk and it's going to be full of balloons and sparkles, and there's going to be chain. And when we hit the 7 million, I want the bells to ring. You're going to pull the chain and balloons are going to flood the office. And you know what he said? He said, oh, I'll do it on a Wednesday because the cleaners come on a Thursday. That was a CFO's idea of celebrating success. But remember, CFOs get really excited when they reconcile bank accounts. So celebrating success is really important at every level. I've got to tell you, I celebrated my kids going back to school after being at home for 2 months. That's a success of a sort. So celebrate success. Kindness is really crucial to important to your business, to your health, to your staff, to your customers. Be kind to yourself and to the people you're dealing with. We're all doing it tough. Next, creativity and how we're going for time. Brilliantly. Humans are so inventive, and right now I am seeing so many amazing responses to the new challenges that we face as businesses. And now is the perfect time to look at how you can, I hate the word pivot only because I've heard it too much, how you can channel, refocus, revitalize energy, needs, the way your customers need you, and how you can also look at ways to have more than one income stream. Multiple income streams, we all know, is the way to go. I remember years ago when I wrote the childbirth book for men, Cheers to Childbirth, still available online, cheerstochildbirth.com.au. When I wrote that book, our ad agency had just lost a major client. And a major client. They represented 80% of our business, so it was not good. And what my husband at the time, wanted me to do was to find new business. What I wanted to do was use this gap in our enormous workload to write this book. So I did win that argument, and I wrote that book. It took me 4 months to write this book, interview 15 high-profile Australian men on their experience of childbirth, and publish that book. That book became an income stream for the next 10 years. An income stream I would never replace with clients. This fabulous income stream, and I've just republished that book. Came out on the 1st of April 2020 with all new interviews. So I encourage you to look at, if you've got some serious downtime, make hay while the sun shines. Look at ways that you can use your energy and your time to fill a need, fill a gap. I filled a gap in that men had no idea what they were doing and needed to be communicated with in their language, in their way. Look for gaps and use that energy. Another gorgeous example, when I was the CEO of the charity in Ethiopia, we had people knitting and crocheting beautiful blankets for the patients in Ethiopia. But Ethiopia is a long, long way away, and we were having to ship these blankets. And if I had $1 for every time somebody told me I should ship them by sea to a landlocked country, I'd be very rich. But we had to air freight them to Ethiopia. It cost a lot of money, and so I had to put a stop to that, which I was very unpopular for. But as I say, I'm here to make the right decisions, not the popular decisions. But there was all this passion and energy, these gorgeous women all over Australia making these beautiful blankets, and I didn't want to lose that passion. And so I just rechanneled it into a program called Crochet for a Cause, where these women taught other women how to crochet. And every class funded an operation in the hospital in Ethiopia and brought us new donors. So it's just a rechanneling of that energy. Take a look how you can creatively rechannel and develop multiple income streams. And finally, in our last few minutes, optimism and fun. Fun is crucial, and in fact, I won't take on a project unless it's fun. If I'm approached about consulting work, the first thing I take a look at is this going to be fun? And if it ticks that box, I move on. It's got to be fun. Life's too short to be a drag. I would like to work with fun people on fun projects. So look at how you can make sure your business is fun. If I can make going to hospital for obstetric surgery fun, for country girls in Ethiopia, we brought in circuses, we taught them how to knit, they'd sing in the hospital. It was incredible how they made this experience fun. If I can do that, you can make your business fun. I know someone who is a funeral director, and her funerals are so much fun. And fun is, again, it ties into your hormones, makes you feel good, makes your customers come back to you, but importantly, your staff will stay with you longer. And we know how expensive it is when staff move on. Staff will stay with you longer when the work they're doing, the people they're working with are fun. And optimism. I don't know any seriously successful business people who are not optimists. And right now is a time when we're desperate. We're desperate for optimists to keep us buoyed. I've noticed that over the last couple of months, I have found myself quietly shying away from the pessimists and the people who are just talking doom and gloom. In fact, I recommend that you do not watch the news. The news trades on fear, and that's only going to make you feel bad. And that's going to make it harder for you to be an optimist. So all I do now is I've subscribed to The Guardian Australia, and I just skim read their email at the beginning of every day, and that is it. That's all I consume of news. And it's pretty balanced. There's a little bit of sport, lots of international news, but it's not so desperately about fear, and it's not a clickbait medium. So the news trades on fear, and when you need to be optimistic, don't feed the fear gland. Just like courage, optimism is contagious, and it will flow through your teams and your people if you are optimistic. Use that technique I spoke about when I was in hospital. Use that technique of fantasizing about what's the best thing that could happen here. What's the best case scenario? Rather than the worst. When I look at risk, I look at what's the worst thing that could happen, and will anybody die? Now, most of us, will anybody die is not going to happen unless you're a brain surgeon. But what's the worst thing that could happen? Look at that. Often it's just a loss of money, maybe even a loss of face. Someone saying no. So what? Give it a red hot go. Then what is the best thing that could happen? And use that really creatively. Before I give really big speeches, when they're live and they're huge audiences, the biggest speech I have ever given is to 14,000 people. The night before, I fantasize and I think through how that speech is going to go. At the end of that speech, I'm given this amazing standing ovation, and then George Clooney comes on stage with one of those giant novelty checks for $100,000. And then I close my eyes and I picture myself getting on a Qantas jet with my check and having to walk past first class with my check and working out how to get that in the luggage compartment. And it's really creative and it makes you feel good. So those are my main tips for doing business differently, not things you tend to hear about. Courage, tap into that for you and your teams. Kindness, it's crucial. You'll live longer if you're kind to yourself. Start saying nice things in the mirror. Creativity, how are you going to channel the energy and the needs of your customers and your clients? How are you going to refocus and rechannel? Really spend some time on that, and that will work better if you're thinking optimistically and you make the process fun. So that's the end of my one-on-one me talking and monologue. And so we have about 10 minutes for question time. Now I am going to go to the Q&A, which is where the questions should be. And there are no open questions. So maybe it's just here in the chat. Do not take, are there any questions you want to hit me with? I'm so thrilled, I have to say, that my dad has logged in to listen to this, because I don't think my dad really knows what I do for a living. So that's excellent. I can't see any questions. Have I answered all the questions for your life today? You know what? If there's not going to be any questions, three new. Do you have any strategies to fuel creativity? Yes. And share your thoughts on building resilience. Okay, I'm going to answer those two questions, and then if there's time, I've got a really cool story. Strategies to fuel creativity. A few things. You need to surround yourself with people who like hearing this stuff. So I have my most creative ideas when I'm running and when I'm in the shower. Now those two times I'm pulled away from every other distraction. So creativity usually comes when nothing else is distracting you. No kids, no text messages, nothing. And I know I do my best work when I do what I call my deep work. And I turn off all distractions. Phone goes on to airplane mode. Sound on my computer is silent. My computer has almost no messages that come in to distract me, because I'm so easily squirrel distracted as it is. So running and having a shower. And I remember I used to come home from runs when I was married. I was married for 20 years and I've been divorced for 5. I used to come home from a run and go, oh, I've had the best idea. And my then husband would go, oh, what? What now? Which is why he is my ex-husband. You need people around you who go, what? What now? What are we going to do? And flesh ideas with. So you need a panel of people who want to hear your creative thinking and help you think it through, but you also need to clear distractions. I have a lot of these ideas in the shower and running, as I said. Now, building resilience. You know, resilience is just the ability to bounce back. To bounce back from difficulty. That's all resilience is at its core. And I really believe that resilience is also a muscle that you can exercise, and you should practice doing things you're not that fond of so that you can bounce back from that and also bounce through things. I'm an absolute believer in moving forward. Keep moving forward. I can't think of a time in my career where looking back has been helpful. Keep moving forward. Even when I've been fired, it's better just to keep moving forward. And so resilience is moving forward, practicing the ability to bounce back. And all these other things I have said feed into that. Not caring what other people think of you and your decisions. Want to close your business? Good. You go and do that. Don't worry about what other people think, and you will bounce through that and forward. Resilience, as I said, is a muscle you need to practice too. So do things that you don't particularly like doing. I call it testing your nerve. Do things that, and you know what's really fun is testing the nerve, helping the people who work for you do things that they don't really like doing. That's really fun. I once hired a woman who in her interview, she said, I'm not much of a computer person, which you should never say in an interview as long as you live. And for lack of candidates, she got the job. And so I put her in charge of IT. So she had to face this thing that she thought she was terrible at. And you know what? She was brilliant at it. I learned this in Cambodia. You put the person in charge of the problem who is the biggest offender of the problem. You know, the chair of the committee to solve alcoholism in the village in Cambodia is always the biggest alcoholic. So, so test the nerve of and the resilience muscle of the people who work for you too. That's really fun. How do you work with people who put up roadblocks? You know what? I identify roadblocks for exactly what they are. And I say that that's a roadblock. Do you have a solution for me rather than a roadblock? I used to, when staff came to me with problems, I go, I hear the problem. Now tell me about the solution, or go away, come back to me once you've thought through a solution. I just name it for exactly what it is. And you can also make that fun in kind of in the way that I go, squirrel. When someone is constantly roadblocking, you can go #roadblock and keep moving forward. Someone said, how did I break away from advertising into consulting and public speaking? It's interesting. First, when I created the childbirth program for men, that forced me to practice presenting. And I had a room full of men who didn't want to be there. And so I had to really practice my pace and my storytelling and my punchline giving. And every single year for 6 years, every single month for 6 years, I practiced that presentation to a room full of men at the pub. So that's how I got good at presenting. Once I was a CEO, people love that title CEO. So I was often invited to give speeches, and then once you get a reputation for being a good speaker, then that kind of thing takes off. And consulting is the same. People know that I'm good at certain things. I'm good at communicating. And you know, you just have to tell people too, and that is what Facebook is for. Make sure every single person in your personal Facebook network, I've got about 1,100 people in my personal Facebook network, friends, they all know that I am an international keynote speaker and a consultant. They all know it. So tell people what you do for a living. Post links to the stuff that you're really proud of. That's a great place to celebrate success and to work out who those other creative thinkers are. So make sure everybody knows what you do for a living. We're coming close to time, but believe it or not, how do I stop? We've got, let's see, a few more minutes. How do I stop trying to change the world? Now, why would you stop? Why would you stop trying to change the world? There's always something that can be improved. And we have a whole new set of challenges right now, and ways to shift. So I would say never stop trying to change the world, or maybe only when it is costing you your health. I had to do that in my role as CEO for the Ethiopian charity. My health was suffering. I loved it so much. I was working myself into the ground. And so that was a good time to stop. And that's when I learned, actually, I'm useless if I'm dead. And I needed to really look after myself first, and then I'd be really useful to others. Do I have a website or newsletter that we can subscribe to? Well, thank you for asking. If you go back to the registration page, there is every link under the sun for ways to find me. But thelucybloom.com is my website, and you can email me if your question hasn't been answered in today's session. Just email me. I'm happy to. I've got plenty of time at the moment, all this time not flying on planes. I can answer more questions. So my email address is thelucybloom@gmail.com. Not any old Lucy Bloom, thelucybloom@gmail.com. I think we're almost at a fold, unless someone can think of a last gorge. Actually, we've got 3 minutes. You know what? Let's use this. I'm going to leave you with a really cool story. Best advice for mums getting into business is just to go, go, go. Don't let anyone talk you out of it. Just go, go, go. I find that doing my work in the morning is better. But you know what? When your kids are little, it's actually really, really hard. But go, go, go. If you're a mum who wants to get into business, just give it a crack. I'm going to leave you with a really cool story. And this is all about courage, rolling with things, planning, and then rolling with things on the day. It's a birth story. I was due on New Year's Eve, and so we thought we were cool to have our usual big Christmas party in mid-December. And as my first contractions began, so the first guests walked down my driveway at the start of that party. And I thought, rip up, I'll have this baby tonight or tomorrow, fabulous. But within 45 minutes, I could not speak during contractions. And there were people pouring through my front door. I'm talking 100 people pouring into my house, music playing, Santa was expected at 8 o'clock, and I couldn't speak through contractions. And I thought, I'm going to have to opt out of this party. So I had to think very creatively, move very swiftly. The plan was changed right under my feet that night. And I said to my then husband, meet me in the bathroom, which he got a little confused by that instruction. I did the runner to our bathroom, skidded into the TV room on my way past and cranked up the music because I knew that I was going to be noisy. If I was about to give birth, I was going to shout the house down and I didn't want everyone to hear me. And so I cranked up the stereo, and I still remember the song was My Sharona. Then I bolted into our bedroom, into the bathroom, flicked on the lights, flicked on the taps, tore my clothes off, jumped in the bath, swung around, and there's a friend of mine, Melinda, standing in my bathroom, rocking off her little newborn, who was 3 weeks old, in the cool dark of the bathroom. I said to her, Melinda, I'm about to have this baby. And she burst out laughing and said, I'll go organise the midwife. She disappeared and phoned my midwife. 2 contractions later, and this baby was coming out, I actually tried to push her back in. And then, right at the same moment, husband appears at the bathroom door with a beer in his hand, and in that very same moment, the baby's head popped out. And I'm standing with my hands against the tile wall with my back to him. The baby's in the anterior position, so she's looking at him. And he said, what do I do? I said, put the beer down, because on the next push, you are catching this baby. He did that really quickly. First time in his life. He listened to what I said, and he caught the baby. And, oh, it was amazing. Caught her on, she came out like a rocket. Caught her, put her in my arms. I sat down in the bath and I looked at this perfect baby, and the photos are perfect because I had a full face of makeup from the party. Husband went out into the party and said, killed the music and said, I have just delivered continued. Midwife arrived, she cut the cord, did the business end of the deal, and then I got dressed, wrapped up my baby, had a quick shower, wrapped up my baby, went out into the party and had champagne. So that was one hell of a birth. I had to move so fast. And that baby, her name is Harlow, which we joke is Hebrew for party crasher. So I hope you can take something from that story that is delightful about, wow, that was one hell of a pivot. So it's been my absolute pleasure to be with you today. My book is, if you enjoyed this speech, you'll absolutely love my memoir, which is Get the Girls Out, a memoir of love, loss and letting loose. And my childbirth book is called Cheers to Childbirth, which you can find online. Thanks again. I've had an absolute ball. As a mother of 3, to have 45 minutes uninterrupted is an absolute gift. So thank you.